Photography isn't just about photographing everything. What's just as important is what you don't photograph, what you don't show in photos. Remember the days when you got your first camera, or maybe you just got your first camera and you are taking photos of everything, right? You just like anything that moves, anything that just like catches your eyes, you take a photo of it. And that's very similar to, beginning wedding photographers. I'm a wedding photographer myself. And when I started out, I just shot everything at a wedding, absolutely everything. But what I learned early on is that everyone doesn't want everything photographed. And part of learning that lesson quickly for me was actually a huge part of my success early on as a wedding photographer. And that is learning what to take photos of and learning what not to take photos of. A comment that I got a lot early on, especially because I was working with lower budget weddings and maybe venues and areas that weren't like the most ideal. A big thing that I got was people would say, oh, wow, like I saw where you were shooting, but like these photos like look amazing, or like it looks way better than what the area looked like. And that was honestly like one of my favorite things to do. Like, how could I make this look way better than it actually looks in real life? And that's not, and I don't mean that in a manipulative way. I think, especially when you're talking about wedding photography, it's not just about making things look pretty, it's making it look in the photos how it felt. Like when you're getting married, and when I was starting out, it was a lot of my friends, they were getting married super young and they didn't have much money. To them, they weren't worried about all the things that maybe didn't look perfect. To them, it felt so exciting, it felt beautiful, and I wanted the photos to reflect that. And how I did that was hide all the things that you don't want to remember and focus on the things that you do want to remember and that you do want to see. While this analogy isn't perfect, it does remind me of when you go to one of those restaurants and you open up the menu, there's like 453 things on the menu, and it's kind of overwhelming. It's kind of concerning. It's kind of like, what does this place do? And I'm kind of overwhelmed. It's a very similar idea to wedding photography, where it's so much better when you have a clear storyline, when it doesn't feel random. It doesn't feel like you're just trying to photograph absolutely everything. It feels better to the viewer. It's way better as a brand if you have kind of a cohesive storytelling throughout the entire day. And a big part of that is not only, making sure that you photograph the things you want to photograph, but that you don't photograph the things that you shouldn't be photographing. You can use more than just the crop tool to crop things out in your photography. And I thought of 4 different ways. The first way is cropping it out in real life through your direction as a photographer. If you've ever photographed a wedding, if you've ever been at a wedding, you know that there are lots of opinions. And it's very common, not so much now, but definitely when I was beginning out the first few years of my business, I had lots of suggestions, lots of family members, different vendors saying, oh, you should shoot this, oh, you should shoot this, oh, you should shoot this. And I just simply, I can't shoot what everyone else wants. Actually, that's not true. Sometimes I do photograph what they want and then just accidentally don't include it in the final photos. Sometimes there's a little bit of a diplomatic benefit in physically taking the photo for someone on an actual day, but not necessarily intending it to use that. It's a way to acknowledge someone, be like, I hear you, I appreciate your input. And while that idea might be funny to you, it's funny to me at least, you do have to be very careful with how you spend your time on a wedding day. There is a limited amount of time, of course. The people that you're working with have a limited amount of kind of peak enjoyment. If things start getting too long, you start losing your couple, you start losing your model or couple or family or whoever it is. So there is a level of needing to be very careful about, how long you spend at certain locations and what locations you shoot with. And so as a photographer, it's up to you to make sure that you're shooting in the best areas and not just taking everybody's advice. I remember shooting a wedding with a planner for the first time. And as a wedding photographer, it is great to work with planners. Not only do they make your day easier and everything easier, but also they're a great collaboration in terms of future referrals. They're very valuable to photographers, and photographers are very valuable to them. This one planner, I absolutely love them, but it was the first time working together, and this person told me, be like, oh, I think you should shoot at this bridge right here. And it's so perfect. Everybody does it. You got to do this. And I was a little nervous. I wasn't sure how to deal with that scenario because I didn't want to shoot at the bridge. It was the wrong lighting. There was like ugly kind of like stuff around that was not my style. It's not what the couple was looking for, because I knew that they loved my photography. They wanted my eye. But I caved. And I did it anyways, and we took the whole bridal party over there, and we got everyone set up, and the sun was blinding their eyes, and it was super hot, and I could tell the situation was starting to fall apart, especially because I didn't believe in the photos that I was taking there. I knew these photos were not going to be good. I don't even know if I was going to include them. And so I took a couple photos quickly, and I moved everybody on over to the location that I wanted to shoot at. Now, scenarios like that are difficult. Thinking back, I don't know if I would have done it again. It is difficult when you're working with someone like a planner because you do want to respect their input. But ultimately, what was best for the couple was not to shoot there. That location and those photos kind of stood out in a weird way because they didn't flow in with my vision of how I was shooting a wedding. A couple hires you because of your vision, because of your eye. They're not hiring you for your aunt's input or some other vendor's input. They're hiring you as the photographer to make those decisions. And so there's a balance that you have to figure out in taking people's advice and then maybe not sharing those photos. Don't tell anyone I said that. But yeah, sometimes you take the photo and you say, oh, okay, thank you, good job. And then you move on because you do want to be flexible. You do want to hear people's opinions. And sometimes there are opinions that are great and there are ideas that are great. So you don't want to be rigid as a photographer, but it's just as important at which locations you don't shoot at, as well as the locations that you do choose to shoot at. The second thing is cropping things out in camera, right? So you might be at the right location. You might be at the most beautiful location, but this is often where I find I'm lazy and other photographers tend to get lazy. And that is, okay, you're at the best location. It's beautiful. It's great lighting. Let's just take these photos, blah, 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 and like move on. But this is where you take the next step out to be like, okay, I'm in a good location, but how can I crop the best area? How can I shoot in the best slice, in the most beautiful section of where the lighting is coming in? And one trick that I do, and I learned this from shooting interior photography for a few years, is the walk around the room rule. In interior photography, interior designers are looking for these kind of vignettes, these slices of where you have layers of furniture, you have all of these beautiful things aligning, and then it just like pops. You're like, oh, there it is. And how you figure those out is I would walk around, a specific room and just look at all the different angles to see how things are aligning and how to, get that best angle. You do the exact same thing for wedding photography. And so what I do is when I get to a location, even if I've shot there before, even if like that's the location where everybody shoots and you just like gotta shoot from this way, I always like take a walk around, look at all the different directions and see if there's maybe an angle people don't normally shoot from, but it looks amazing right now. Maybe the lighting is a little bit different today and it looks better at a different side. So it's really important to crop with your camera, right? It's like, keep out the things that aren't looking best and keep in the things that look best. And I know maybe all these concepts are kind of basic, but I'm telling you, if you consciously think about these things, it will make your photography more intentional and it will make it better. Speaking of interior photography, another little trick that's very cool is this architectural idea about repeating patterns and extending lines. And this, all it takes is just like a little movement of the camera up or the little movement of the camera down. But the idea of it is that if you have like a repeating line, is to cut the photo off before the repeating ends. And it gives this idea, or say if there's like a long line, maybe there's like a pathway or something, and the idea is to cut it off before that line ends. Because you don't see what comes next, your eye and your brain kind of thinks that it just like keeps going on forever and ever, and it gives a very, I think, beautiful and great look. The third way is just cropping, right? That's just like taking out the bad stuff after you've taken the photo. And sometimes that means just like taking out a little distracting thing that's at the corner of the photo. But this also means not just cropping, but retouching, taking out things that wreck the image. You might be in the best location. You might have, put your camera at the most ideal angle, cropping out all the bad stuff, keeping all the good stuff in. But sometimes in order to just like bring the photo home, bring it where it completely needs to be, sometimes you just need to like bring in the corners, bring in the side, rotate it a little bit, and take the extra step to take out the extra little garbage things that destroy the photo. And the final step of cropping out the bad and keeping in the good is curation. Choosing the right photos to give to your client can totally make or break you. It can be a huge impact on the final product, and not just for your clients, but for social media, for your advertising. It's like I said at the beginning, it's just as important what you don't show as what you actually do show. I think going back to when I started out as a wedding photographer, I remember just being a little bit overwhelmed with how many photos I needed to take and how many I needed to deliver. And so I often didn't spend as much time as I could have, culling down the photos, selecting down the photos to where it was just a perfect amount in order to tell the story. Something that I think as I'm going through photos, this is something that Allie, my wife, does a lot too as we work on this business together. She does a lot of behind the scenes things, the editing, the culling and things like that. But something that we think about as we go through our photos is, do we need this photo? Does this photo help tell the story? Does it help propel it forward? And if it doesn't, maybe you don't need it. Are you giving them like a few different photos for selection? Like, okay, there's 2 nice poses of her face that, she might like this. Or are we just being a little lazy and not taking the work to really looking like, okay, is this photo better or is this photo better? Okay, yeah, let's get rid of that. And this is really hard. It takes a lot of time. It doesn't maybe feel like the most productive thing, but I am telling you, curation is everything in creating a brand. It is everything in advertising and what you're showing. If you're just like putting stuff up on social media on your website without thinking too much about it, you are definitely doing it wrong. Curating down your photos, getting rid of photos. I know that's so difficult because it's easy to be attached to photos. It's easy to be like, I just want to share everything with the client, but often that's not the best thing. Don't share everything. Curate down to the best photos, share what actually tells the story, and you'll be well on your way to creating a really powerful photography brand. And before we finish, I want to tell you about 2 things. The first thing is my Light and Airy preset. If you don't know this already, you can find the preset that I use on all the photos that I used in this video and every photo that I use ever. This is my actual preset that I use in my own business. And if you want to use this for your own business, you can check it out in the link below. Go to my shop and it's called the Light and Airy preset. The second thing is I've made a video on this personal project that I made called Shoot Like an Artist. It's a personal project that is like a photo book turned into kind of like an essay pep talk about being a creative person and facing your creative fears. And it's a small photo book zine that I spent, the last year and a half working on. If you're interested in getting one, the last time to order it will be June 1st. So if you're interested, make sure you get that right away. Thank you to so many of you who already purchased it. and you can also find that in the shop. All right, that's all for now. I'll see you next week.